Welcome to the Writer's Block podcast, a podcast for Christian women writers who want to love God, love words, and love their readers. We know that sharing your words with the world takes courage. You desire to see your work make an eternal impact, but it's not always easy to hit publish. Writing often fills us with self-doubt and fear, and we wonder, who am I to write about this? If you want to build a writing platform without losing heart, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Writer's Block, a community of writers who gather weekly to grow in the art and heart of writing. I'm Kara Ray, your host, and you're listening to the Writer's Block podcast. Hey everyone, welcome. So glad to see so many of you today who've shown up to hear from Lara D'Entremont. Did I pronounce that with the right emphasis on the right syllable? I hope.
We say D'Entremont, but
D'Entremont, a little less French nasally stuff going on. Well,
we
anyway,
are French, but we don't quite have that accent.
Not so much nasal sound. Well, anyway, we're so excited to have you here today. She's been in our community for a while now, and I'm just thrilled to have her with us. I went after Lara in a fangirl moment. Like, I'm just in love with the way you write, and I love your messaging, and you just have such a beautiful way with words. And I was like, we need this lady in our community. And so she and I have become friends, and I'm just so thrilled to have her here. So Lara, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you live, what you do, your writing. Tell us all the things.
Yeah, well, you've seen my two kids. They're about, my childcare is on the way in here a few minutes to take care of them. But I have three boys, twins who are a little over 2.5, and a 5-year-old boy. I live in the middle of nowhere in Nova Scotia. If you've ever heard of the, Halifax sends a tree to Boston every year to thank them from helping them in the explosion that happened in the Halifax harbor. So I'm about 3 hours from there to kind of give you an idea of where I am.
Okay. You're way up north and east. Yes.
Yeah. And we're way down at the bottom of the province, surrounded by trees. It's great. Small population.
Wonderful. And tell us a little bit about your writing. What kind of writing do you do? Do you enjoy? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I started writing in grade 2, actually, and it was because I was really bad at writing. The teacher would assign, write a story, here's a story prompt, or just write a short, 1-page story. And I couldn't do it. I didn't know how. It was too difficult. I couldn't figure it out. It didn't make sense to me. And so then my grade 2 teacher told my mom, you should get her to practice at home, because obviously we don't have time in class to try to sit here all day and figure this out. Get her to practice at home. Here's some stuff she can do. And my mom was very diligent about it. And that year, my writing just flourished, I guess you could say, inside of me. And I grew to love it. I didn't stop writing after that. And I wrote stories for most of my school years.
Real life happening.
And I wrote stories for most of my school life until about grade 12, when I started writing more in a blogging kind of way. I set up a WordPress blog and bought a template and got started. From there, I mostly developed my article writing skills and some of my narrative writing skills and personal essays and more memoir type writing. And now I also do the fiction as well on the side. I still haven't gotten any book deals or anything, and who knows if they'll ever see the light of day, but it's a fun thing to do when I'm feeling tired and stressed and just I have no writing ideas, no article ideas. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I do a bit of everything, but I mostly focus though on essays and articles.
Okay. Well, I love that you started because you weren't good at it, and I think that gives us hope for all of us, that we're all on a projection of improvement. And even with kids at home too, I have kids too that just struggle with writing, and there was something in you that really kind of wanted to get better at it, and you did. over the course of your life and are bearing a lot of fruit with that right now. So when you're writing for yourself, and I know that you do some, freelance work as well, but when you're writing for yourself, what is it that you most enjoy writing about?
When I'm writing for myself, I mostly, I'm the door now. So when I write for myself, I write on my blog, like I said, personal essays, and I do like a lot of devotional kind of writing for places like Well Watered Women and more like kind of like think pieces that Risen Motherhood looks for. And I've never really gotten into the more journalistic writing, but I kind of touched on that when I did a piece for Christianity Today, talking about some new findings in the world of like home marketing and buying houses and the way people are looking at their properties and how they're styling their homes. I did a bit of it there, but for the most part, I focus on like the kind of Christian living article writing that you find in the typical Christian living books or like TGC and Journey Women and places like that.
Okay. So today we're talking about truth, goodness, and beauty. Where does that fit in to your writing life?
So for me, I've always loved the phrase of truth, beauty, and goodness. I discovered it through another blogger years ago. And I did some research on it. I'm like, where did she just come up with these? Like, she had named her blog that. I'm like, how does one think of these three lovely words and pair them together to describe something? And I found out it was a saying way back from like, if you do classical education, like way back then with like Aristotle and Plato, they were talking about it then of this concept of the three transcendentals of truth, beauty, and goodness, and how everything falls into those categories. And all three of them are necessary, and that we need all three together. And so I started looking at my writing that way, that I want to communicate truth and I want to communicate goodness and I want to do it in a beautiful way because I think all of them are essential. And I've noticed at different points in my writing career where I perhaps focused on one to the neglect of another, where maybe I got so excited about the truth and teaching this theological concept or teaching this new biblical doctrine or exegeting a passage. But then it wasn't really beautiful. It was just kind of dry and maybe even angry and perhaps prideful, even at times, of, angry that someone else doesn't agree with this. And like, how can people not see this in the Bible? And there wasn't any goodness there either. It was sometimes mean spirited. And then I see other times where maybe I focused too much on the beauty to the point that it almost distorted the truth that I wanted to communicate. That in saying something beautiful and trying to be very metaphorical, it actually communicated something that goes against God's word. And so I realized I need all three. And I need the goodness to be fueling me as I go and do the work, that I'm doing what is right. I'm seeking to be just and nuanced and careful with my words, but that I am always communicating truth, even when it's scary, even when it's unpopular. But I'm striving to do so in a beautiful way that honors God and that it doesn't come across as angry and harsh and something that just makes them want to cringe, right? I want to make something that they can say, even if they disagree, at least, they could understand the point because they weren't so bombarded by difficult language or by a mean spirit behind my words.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to geek out a little bit because I love that so much. If you all, I don't know if you all have heard me talk about this, but I helped found a classical school. And so this idea of truth, beauty, and goodness is so ingrained in me. And I see it so much in the Word of God. And really when we think about it, and I love the word transcendentals because it's like it kind of supersedes all other things, right? All other virtues. And that those three are like this trinity of truth that is true about who Jesus Christ is. He is true, he is good, and he is beautiful. And so I love that, Lara, so much. I think that that's such a great application of using those transcendental virtues and applying them in your writing. And it is sort of like a balance, right? Like if you have
Hmm.
two, if sometimes you can be so sure that you're so right about something that the scale tips and it's no longer beautiful. It's more like a hammer, right? That you're kind of hitting somebody over the head with. So, so like, can you talk to us a little bit more about like what truth, goodness, and beauty is? Can you define those maybe a little further for us?
Yeah. So obviously, I would define truth as truth. There is actual truth. It's not, it's not whatever feels good to you, whatever your truth is, but there is absolute truth, and it is transcendental. No matter what time we're in, no matter where we are culturally or in society, there always is this basic truth of what is true, and truth comes from God first. We find this ultimate truth in God's word and even in his creation, the way he's made things. And that's truth. It's not necessarily what we feel or what we think is right, but rather what God has declared, this is right, and this is the truth, and this is the way my world works, and this is the way I have ordered it to work and instructed it. As for beauty, I would think of that not just in an aesthetic way of like style our home, or what clothes we wear or how we do our makeup. We often think of these physical things as what's beautiful, but rather I would say, well, yes, those things can contribute to beauty. I'd say beauty can ultimately be defined by what is true and good. If it's true, if it's good. A beautiful quote that I loved from Albert Moeller. He said, the model who has been and has piles of makeup on and who really doesn't look like that picture you see on the front of the magazine, that's not beautiful. But the face of a child with Down syndrome, that is beautiful. And like that just, if that doesn't define beauty, I mean, what beauty is. Beauty is what is true and good in this world, what is real. And that just what causes us to pause and be awed, the power and wonder of God. When you're walking outside and you see this beautiful iris growing up in the muck of a pond, and you say, that's beautiful. And you say, there is God. Or when you hear a bird singing out her song in the tree, and that causes your heart to stir and say, look at God, that he invented music. That's beautiful. Those things that cause us to pause and just be awed at the wonder of our creator. That's where beauty is.
Hmm.
And then as for goodness, I would think of that in the sense of with our hands and our actions, those things, what the truth and the beauty, what they create in us. If we are holding to the truth and if we are striving towards beauty, goodness should come out of us when we
Hmm.
are living lives of truth and beauty. Because times I think, we can get all the time, I see it in myself, where I get so hung up on the truth that it becomes like that hammer, that it's no longer beautiful. And honestly, it's no longer good. It might still be true, but the way we're communicating it and the damage we're doing as we communicate it is not good. So
Hmm.
goodness is like those ethics, and it's the heart, the way we're going about it, the mindset we have as we go about it. And I think that's how I would really define those three, especially when looking at the art of writing.
I'm thinking as you're talking through that, like, do you think that those line up with, in the Word of God, it says that we should love the Lord with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. Like those, um, when you were describing goodness, you were saying it's like your acts, right? It's the things that you're doing with your hands that are the goodness is defined that way. So could that correspond with loving the Lord with all your strength, right? And the those do those virtues line up with that? Do you think, in terms of loving the Lord with all your heart and mind and strength? Do those three kind of line up together with truth, goodness, and beauty?
I think so. It makes me think of, if you've ever read C.S. Lewis's The Abolition of Man, he talks about men without chest. I think of that. It's like we're so focused on truth that we neglect the beauty and goodness. We become like those men without chest. And when he says chest, he's referring to that heart, right? That you're so focused on the mind that you've lost the heart, the soul of what you're doing and why you're doing it. You've made it this, because he talks about in the book that these writers of an English book, they were saying, somebody looks at a waterfall and says, "Oh, it's so beautiful." And he's like, "No, no, it's not beautiful. You just feel that it's beautiful. And what matters is the plain thoughts, it's water and it's falling." And he's saying we're creating men without chests when we
Mm.
do this, that we're focusing so much on the mind that we've neglected the heart.
It's so interesting. Yeah, and then and that can overflow into our writing, as you said earlier, that as Christian writers, that this really should be the way that we approach writing, is that it should be about truth, goodness, and beauty. So I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with that. It is the art and heart, really,
Mm-hmm.
of writing. So, do you think that as Christian writers that maybe we tend to emphasize one over the other, or is there one that is more important than the other two?
I think it depends. Like, I notice it in certain circles, like in some circles of the Christian writing world, there are some who are, I often say this, I'm like, this book was really beautiful. It's filled with so much teaching that no, I can't recommend it, which makes me so sad. Or then I look at a book and it's like, wow, this had really great truth in it, but it was just so difficult to read. It was it was torturous. And I think we do because we are right that we often swing. We see it in theology, we see it in the trends. We swing from one side to another like a pendulum rather than walking middle ground, which we should. And what yeah, I think we need to remember that all three of them go together. It's the three that rely on each other. They're a trinity, like you said, Kara, and we can't neglect any of them or place one more important than the other because truth, yes, there's ultimate truth, and it's defined by God. It matters how we go about communicating that truth. And then goodness is defined by what is true and what is beautiful. And then beauty is defined by what is true and good. We can't separate them because when we do, things are not only uneven, but things are not working right anymore.
Oh, so true. I love that. Yeah, they just do connect. They can't be separated. Cheryl said it makes me think of Philippians 4:8, which is true.
Yes.
The things that we're to be thinking on, things that are good and true and beautiful, right? Like that is exactly what we're commanded to be about. And I think maybe now more than ever, like that message is needed for the church. It's needed for
Mm-hmm.
the world as well, right? Because there is so many things that can steal that joy and steal that focus away for us. So let's bring it like back home to the whole topic of writing. So how does this affect our writing? What would you say to us in terms of like how can we practically be people of truth, goodness, and beauty in our writing? How does that work itself out?
Yeah, I think we need to do as writers is we need to be checking our hearts, immersing ourselves in the truth, and also taking that time to rest and experience beauty, whether it's going for a walk, getting away from our screens for a bit, or reading a good and beautiful book. There's thousands of books out there, but we want to make sure we're reading the right books. And I think in a way, reading can be that ultimate place where we really harness and craft our writing to be a place of truth, beauty, and goodness. When we're reading books that are beautiful, beautifully communicating the truth, communicating what is good, that's where we really grow and develop as writers. Because I always tell people I attribute my growth as a writer to both editors and the books I've read. Because it's those who have edited me and looked for, what, you said this in a really boring way, or what, I don't think that's what scripture says. I think you're going off track there a bit. Or what, you really need to say this in a more nuanced way because while this is true, there are also other parts of this. There's more gray in here. You've become too zeroed in on one aspect of this issue. And so I think making sure that we're being edited by people who are at the same place as us or more mature than us, who have that extra experience, who can see into our writing and see where maybe we're going too far one way, or can have that biblical knowledge to be able to say, you're straying from the truth of scripture. Or, you know what, this phrase, while it's true, could use some reworking so that way it's more pleasant and enjoyable for your reader. And so I'd say editing and then reading good books that they're filling our minds and our hearts and that they're helping us produce something good with our hands. I think those are the most important things we can be doing as writers. And when we neglect them, it shows in a hard way.
And really, when we do that for one another, when we are that extra set of eyes on our own words, like Lara has done this for me recently, where she looks at my words, and we can be so close to it, we don't see what other people are seeing from an outside perspective. But it's like speaking the truth in love, right? Like that is what a gift that we have with each other, that we can be like, no, I think you're a little off track here, or it could be perceived that way. And so that's just another way to speak truth in a pleasant way to somebody, to help them improve in their own writing. So I love that. So I mean, can we apply truth, goodness, and beauty in things like our SEO, our web design, our graphics, like, or is that like too base, too banal for something so transcendental? Like, can this apply to those things as well, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard Jana's talk about how we often think things like SEO, it's this really formulaic and boring way of writing. But like she said, SEO wants to see good writing because good writing ultimately is what keeps people on the page. And that's what the SEO algorithm wants. So I think it does matter. And I think it also, the more physical element of beauty, we do want our website to be aesthetically pleasing and user friendly. That's the goodness, right? When we've
Mm-hmm.
created something that's super clunky and irritating to use, and like I think of websites that I've been on that a pop up pops up, and that's fine, but then I can't get rid of the pop up or I can't get away from the pop up. I'm like, this isn't good. This isn't
Right.
helpful. It's totally defeated the purpose of your website because now I'm leaving because I could
Exactly.
not get past the pop up for like
Right. You
just
could have
things
had
like
wonderful
that.
things to share, and we've got distracted and pulled away from that. Yeah.
And I think communicates a level of trust to our readers too. When you have a user friendly place, you want them to feel at home. You want to create a hospitable place. And that's a way of communicating love and kindness to your reader when you're doing things like making the text easier to read, making the website pleasant on the eyes and easy to use and navigate. It's a way we love our reader with the truth and the beauty and the goodness. Because if we neglect all those things and say, all that matters is I'm writing perfect words, but nobody can really get to those perfect words, or they're too distracted by all the loud things happening around them on the website, the purpose has been defeated.
Yes. I totally agree. So, one of the things that you, I think, are most well known for is just your keen editorial eye. And you're just, I mean, Jana calls you the goat of editing. So, so how does that play into all of this as well?
As writers, we need to be such careful editors. We need to have eyes to see. And it is hard. And that's why we need extra sets of eyes. Because especially when you've read that piece for the 20th time, you're not only ready to be done with it because you're so sick of those words, but also you know what you mean. I know exactly what I was intending to communicate with that sentence. But then somebody else comes along and reads it and they're like, I have no idea what you're trying to say here. Or because I'm Canadian, they point out, is this some kind of Canadian phrase? Because I have no idea what that word is. And so it does matter. And we need to make sure that we're getting those extra eyes, especially on a piece that perhaps deals with a more tricky subject or a piece that requires a lot of nuance. We want to make sure we're getting all the eyes we can on it. Or maybe we're dealing with a difficult passage and we want to make sure, you know what, am I actually handling this correctly? You know, as Paul instructs Timothy, be found handling the word rightly dividing it. And so we want to make sure that we're checking ourselves. So when we do talk about a Bible passage, even if you've heard this Bible story a million times and you know it by heart, still making that practice of, I'm going to check my trusted commentaries. I might ask my pastor. I'm going to make sure I think this right and clearly. And things like, you know, reading it over and looking for not just grammatical mistakes, but looking for things like, is this written in the active or the passive voice? Is this, you know, making sure that everything makes sense? Is this sentence way too long that my reader feels like they need to take a breath, even though they're reading it in their head? You know, we
Right.
want to
Yeah.
make sure that it isn't a stumbling block. The way to graciously take our reader by the hand and lead them through the sometimes treacherous path of being a Christian or of doing the right thing or of understanding God's word, that we're being a helping hand and not stumbling block.
I love that. I think it elevates it because I think sometimes we can all just kind of groan inwardly when we think about commas and run-on sentences and active versus passive, right? Like I think all of those things can feel so like boring and dull and kind of necessary, but not sexy, not fun, right? But you know, it is a way to love our reader and to rightly handle the word of truth. Every little word makes a difference. And sometimes just one change of a preposition can really change the meaning of a whole sentence. And so that is a
Exactly.
matter of taking care of the word, rightly dividing it. So so is there like a piece of advice? Can you kind of sum up this whole idea of being writers of truth, goodness, and beauty and kind of sum it up for us in an advice um, way to think of the way we approach our writing?
I think one of the greatest characteristics we can grow in as believers is discernment. No
Mm.
matter whether we are writers or not, discernment is so essential. And yet we oftentimes neglect it. We think, oh, well, I'll let my pastor do that work. I'll let my Bible study leader do that work. I'll let my favorite Christian influencer do that work. But I don't need to discern. I have my little set of learn from. That's it. I think that's where we can really start to feel, just sit back, whatever words that we're listening to come in and not be discerning. And I think as writers, it's especially important because we don't want to be further wrong teaching that we've just
Mm-hmm.
listened to without discerning it ourselves. We want to be discerning in what we're learning so that what we're teaching is likewise in line with God's word. So that means we need to know again and again, it comes back to knowing God's word, that we have it hidden in our hearts, that we know the truth, that we know what God has intended for us. We know the essentials, because that's what it comes down to. Not that we have every little secondary and tertiary issue figured out, but rather that we know the essentials and we are established in them so that we can test everything others say and everything we say, that to make sure we are within the bounds of orthodoxy. And then that also comes to when we're writing, you know, being discerning about what word choices am I making. You know, I was listening to something the other day and the way they worded something, I had a friend who she's had many miscarriages and she finds the word miscarried is used very flippantly,
Mm-hmm.
that will just say like, oh, and then this, I don't know, they miscarried this word, or they use it in a very flippant way, and she finds it listen to. She finds it hard to hear because it reminds her of her three miscarriages she's had and how awful they were. And so, like, even just being discerning about what kind of language am I using? And not that we have to be like and like always looking through our writing, fearful that we're going to say something offensive, but just having that discerning eye. I know a lot of people say, I just want to be able to publish something and not have to worry about it. And just, well, it's my own personal blog. This is where all my thoughts are. But the reality is, when we're publishing something online, we do have to care. If you want to write something without having to worry about editing and just say whatever you want, that's what your journal is for. That's what the ripped up envelope in the garbage is for. That's
Right.
do that. But when we're writing online, even if you think I have such a small following, it doesn't matter, it still does. Every one person matters. And we want to be careful with these words that we're publishing, because when we aren't, people do get hurt, even if it's just, that small blogger in the corner of the internet. We can still say harmful things, and we need to be so careful with the words we choose. And if we're unsure, we're like, I don't know, maybe there is something off with this piece. It's better to wait on it. It's better for the content calendar to get messed up a bit, piece that you're unsure about, and wait on those words. And like, you know what? I'd rather spend the time dwelling on this myself or waiting to get the extra pair of eyes on it than publish something that could lead somebody astray or even hurt somebody who's already deeply hurting.
Yeah. So that's so good and such a needed thing. Like, um, it's not necessarily about, I mean, it is getting better at the craft, right? But really what we're talking about is being spirit led and being spirit filled in our day-to-day work and in the words that we publish. They say the internet is forever, right? But at the same time, like we can't be so fearful that we don't try and that we also evolve and we go back and we see old things that we've written. We're like, oh, I don't know that I handled that. I mean, we're not called to be perfect, right? We're called
Exactly.
to just walk worthy and to do that with some just spirit dependency. Like we just need grace, right? We just need a lot of grace, and we're not perfect. But the heart, that the intent is that we want to honor the Lord. I read this quote this morning by John Piper. It says, he said that Christ is most, or he said, Christ is most praised when he is our prize. And I just thought
Mm.
that was such a good thing, just to think about today, is just, is he your prize? If he is your prize, then he is being praised, right? In the way that you put your words out there into the world. So we need a lot of grace. We need a lot of the Spirit's help to be discerning. Um,
What you
Lara,
said
what are
about like having grace about, sorry to interrupt, what you were saying though
oh,
about
thanks.
having grace for ourselves, that's part of embodying the truth and the goodness. Because when we can recognize and say, you know what, the honest truth is, I didn't communicate or handle the truth rightly in this post. And so I'm going to be honest with you as my reader and say, I messed up here. And the goodness of being able to say, I'm sorry, forgive me. And I think that, like, I think we sometimes think, oh, I failed because I said this wrong thing. It's important that we're able to have the humility and the grace to say when we have messed up, rather than just trying to sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. Just delete the post, forget it ever happened, ignore the emails that come in or the comments that multiply on our social media. Instead, being able to say, you know what, here it is, it was wrong, and I'm sorry. And that's where truth, goodness, and beauty can again grow from even something where we got it wrong.
Sure. Yeah, that's so important as well. So, what are you going to talk to us about on Thursday in your solo teaching?
Yeah, I want to go through each of these specific of truth, goodness, and beauty, really define them and get into what they mean, and then what the practical outworking of each one looks like in our writing, and then give you some tools to go and implement this in your writing.
Awesome. That would be great. We're looking forward to that. So, I just wanted to open this up to you all who are on the call with us. If you have any comments or questions for Lara. Does this idea of truth, goodness, and beauty resonate with you all? I would think that it would. You all were attracted to the art and heart of writing, but do you all think about this often in your own writing practice? Or is this like an, oh yeah, like I need to think about that more moment?
I have a question. I just subscribed to Lara to your Substack, and I think I got one this morning, and I'm already just loving the way you write and communicate. Um, so I find myself struggling with, I just came upon the phrase purple prose. I think somebody, Rachel maybe talked
It
about
was
it.
Rachel.
Um,
Yeah.
and right, yeah, and I'm like, I'm always drawn to that. You know, I love the way Anne Voskamp writes. I love some of that really flowy style of writing. And to me, that's beautiful. And then I've heard several people recently talk about purple prose, stay away from that, you know, and I'm like, you know, that what if that's who you are? And I mean, I know you don't want to go over the top because you don't want to bring the attention to yourself, but how do you do that in a way that honors God to use beautiful, flowy, maybe not typical expected phrasing to draw glory to God? How do you find the balance between that?
First, thank you for your kind words about my writing. That's really sweet. And yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And first, I think there is definitely a preference out there. Like I've heard, especially with Anne Voskamp, I've heard some people say her writing just speaks to my soul. And other people are like, I cannot stand another second because it takes too long to read. And so, for one, I think there is a preference. And at the end of the day, if a reader doesn't like the way we write, right, we don't want somebody who's following our writing who can't stand our writing. Like, we don't want to put them through that. And they aren't going to support our writing in the end. And so, for one, there is a preference thing, and that's okay. People will have preferences. And then also, I think there is a point where you were kind of hinting at this, where writing, if it's too much, it can almost become a distraction and encumbering to our reader. Actually, one time when I was working on a novel and I sent it to an editor, and it was both a high moment and a low moment. She said, "Your descriptions are so beautiful." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." And she's like, "But there's so much description that I completely missed what was going on because I had distracted her. I got lost for it, so to speak. Like, while I was spending so much time describing the scenery and all the setting and what everybody looked like, she completely missed the little nuance point that I was trying to draw out in that scene." And so when she got to this climactic point in the book, she said, "I didn't realize everything was to this." And when I showed her afterwards, well, I dropped this hint and this hint and this hint. She's like, "I missed all of that. I don't even remember those because I was so lost in your descriptions." And I think that can happen whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. If we are just going around and around and around in these circles of flowery prose, but we're never actually really trying to bring out that point for our reader. And I get that, like, yes, creative writing, I do it myself. It's sometimes it's about going around and around that point and letting your reader kind of find the message in your story. But there's also a point when we can overdo it, that it's for our reader to find that nugget and to find that truth that we've implemented into our writing. And so it is a balance, and it's also knowing our reader and also knowing where we're going, like, in recognizing if this is the kind of writing I want to do, then I also need to make sure I'm putting myself in front of those kinds of readers, because I don't want to trick people into thinking, oh, this is the kind of writing that I'm going to be getting. But then they find out we're one of those flowery people they can't stand. And they're mad that they subscribed.
Yeah, that's such a good question, Cheryl. I've been thinking about that too. And I think it is, there is an element of like, is it true to you? Right? Sometimes I think we can, I think it was Ronnie Rock who said, don't try and be an Anne. Don't try and be an Anne Lamont and an Anne Voskamp, right? Like, be Cheryl. Is this how Cheryl sounds? You know, but I appreciate that too. I love that idea of purple prose. Carrie said she loves this concept, and it really is how I try and speak and write, but I've not thought about it in terms of writing. So thanks, Carrie, for that. I think that's really good. Any other comments or questions for Lara?
I love how you wove together the truth, beauty, I'm getting it wrong, truth, beauty, and goodness, not just in our writing, but just how we approach the words on the page, like the font and the pop-ups and like the practical aspects of it. I mean, so much of it is how we write, but then there's the practical aspects of it. And so sometimes when we hear conversations like this, it can be a little hard to have a takeaway with. But then when I heard you talk about, okay, practically, is the font easy to read? And is my website welcoming? I'm like, oh yeah. I mean, it makes me want to go to my own website and be like, okay, is it welcoming? Is it easy to read? I mean, is it just artistic or is it welcoming to others? Anyway, I love the way you talked about that.
Yeah, I think, well, it makes me think of a conversation I was actually having with another writer. We were talking about how, we're driving through our local towns sometimes, and you'll see this like new business pop up, and they had this sign in like cursive. But I'm driving by and like I've driven by that sign 20 times, and to this day, I still have no idea what it says. And I think, wow, they put a lot of work into that sign, but not helping me because I have no desire to go there because I have no idea what it even says. And so we want to make sure we're actually clearly communicating. And, maybe that beautiful calligraphy font is lovely, but if no one can read it, it doesn't serve its purpose. First got my logo done. I remember I told the designer, I said, I love the way you do calligraphy, and I want you to make a fully, I just want you to handwrite my whole logo. And she said to me, now I know you're the client. You get to decide at the end of the day what you do. She said, but from my perspective, she's like, you do have a difficult name. And she's like, probably not be able to read it. She's like, it's one thing for Pepsi to do a calligraphy font. We all can recognize the word Pepsi. It's another thing for you with a very different and unique French name and a unique first name to do an entire calligraphy font, and nobody can read it. And so she's like, in order for the logo to be memorable and to represent you, people need to be able to understand it.
Yeah, it's kind of the scales that we talked about earlier, right? Where the beauty might outweigh the goodness of it, right? Because it's not recognizable or something like that. And so keeping those things in that tension and that balance is an important thing. And it's not always we don't always know what that is, right? And so having each other extra eyes on words and logos matter.
Yes.
Right? People can see things we can't see.
Exactly.
Well, Lara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for listening to the Writer's Block podcast. We hope you've been encouraged in both the art and heart of writing. Did you know there's a Writer's Block community where we share even more teaching, encouragement, and support with one another? You can learn more at mywritersblock.com. If you have a friend who wants to grow in confidence and clarity in her writing, would you please take a minute to share this episode with her? And then would you take one more second and hit subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're listening to? Thanks for joining your neighbors on the block today. We'll see you next week as we grow in the art and heart of writing together.